Senate except during an election year, and further that program of sittings outside Parliament buildings in Nairobi be drawn to ensure that such sittings take place in different counties of the Republic of Kenya. The Chairperson Standing Committee on Matters Finance and Budget will be moving a motion that Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Matters Finance and Budget, and this is on the 2023 Budget Policy Statement. The medium-term debt management strategy is a motion by the Chairperson Standing Committee on Matters Finance and Budget, and senators will be resuming debate on this particular motion. After conclusion of the allocated time for debate, as senators will proceed into division, where they will be voting to approve or disapprove the recommendations on medium-term debt management strategy. The Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill is a bill number 5 of the year 2022 by the Senator Danson Mungatana, a bill that senators will be resuming debate on the amendments proposed in the bill. Similarly, the senators will equally be considering another bill by Senator Danson Mungatana, and this particular bill is on the Natural Resources Benefit Sharing Bill, this being a bill from the Senate, Bill number 6 of the year 2022. The County Vocational Education and Training Bill, Bill number 3 of the year 2022, is a bill currently at the second stage, and this particular bill is by the Senator for Homa Bay County, Senator Moses Kajwang. The Senator for Marsabit County, Senator Mohamed Chute, will be seeking to move a motion on the institution of measures to curb the incessant high electricity costs in Kenya, and this is to regulate the cost of electricity. The Speaker of the Senate, Amason Kingi, that is Honorable Amason Kingi, is in the chambers this afternoon. I'll now hand you over so you can follow up on the live proceedings of the Senate. Enjoy your viewing. My name is Gladys Mungai.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with abundant favor and blessings us, your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen. Clerk, do we have quorum? Sergeant at Arms, kindly ring the bell for 5 minutes.
The Speaker of the Senate has directed the Sergeant at Arms to ring the quorum bell for 5 minutes, and this is pursuant to the provisions of the Senate standing orders that gives powers to the Speaker that at any particular time when the Senate doesn't have the requisite number to commence business, then the quorum bell must be rung for 5 minutes and a further 5 minutes, upon which after that, if the quorum is not yet achieved, the Speaker will give directives in regards to how this afternoon sitting will be taking direction. The institution of measures to curb incessant high electricity costs in Kenya is a motion by Senator for Marsabit County, and this is Senator Mohamed Chute, that are aware that energy is an essential factor of production and its total consumption is a major determinant of performance of the economy, and with its cost and reliability spurring and stifling economic growth, there has been a significant growth in the demand for electricity in Kenya, driven by economic growth as well as increased efforts towards rural electrification, while the supply has been constrained, and this is due to, among other factors, the over-reliance on hydroelectric power generating plants that have been negatively impacted by the perennial drought experienced in the country. The imbalance in the demand and supply of power, coupled with payments by the Kenya Power and Lighting Company for produced power not consumed, as well as fluctuation in the foreign exchange rates, contributes to the high electricity cost. The senator in the motion also notes that Kenya has made strides in diversifying its power sources with geothermal plants and offering tremendous potential for zero carbon source of power, and already producing nearly 1 gigawatt of power. The private power generating companies, popularly referred to as independent power producers, only supply 28% of power to Kenya Power and Lighting Company, but cannot account for 47% of power purchase costs, calling for the need to enhance energy management in Kenya. In the motion, the Senate now resolved that the Standing Committee on Matters Energy does undertake an inquiry into the contracts signed by the independent power producers, detailing the costs, capacity, and duration of the contractual agreements and their implications on the affordability of the electricity in the country. Also undertake inquiry into the discrepancy in the cost of electricity sold to Kenya Power by KenGen and imports from Ethiopia, as well as IPPS. And finally, undertake an inquiry into the diversification of electricity generated by the Lake Turkana wind power to the national grid, bypassing the inadequately supplied northern frontier counties, and this is Marsabit as well as Samburu counties. The senator in the motion also seeks to have the Senate resolve to have the Minister of Energy come up with a policy framework, and this particular policy framework is aimed at lowering the cost of electricity as well as addressing the high cost of living and enhancing clean energy by switching to renewable sources of energy. And these renewable sources of energies are such as geothermal power, wind energy, among others, and this is a way of reducing the carbon footprint. The senator for Nyeri County and the senator for Mombasa County, that is Senator Homo Matinga and Senator Mohamed Faki respectively, do have a motion on the enhancing of Kenya highway safety convenience. That aware of 67% of road crash fatalities and injuries in the country comprise of the economically productive age groups, and this is members between 15 to 64 years, and that the importance of good post-crash care reduces death and disability, and matters suffering for road crash survivors creates the urgent need for effective emergency medical care system elements and processes on our highways. These particular senators in this particular motion are seeking to have the Senate resolve that the Kenya National Highway Authority, in collaboration with the Kenya Council of Governors, do come up with a policy framework on the incorporation of the Kenya reserves for roadside amenities in all highway designs. The senators also want the Senate to resolve that the Ministry of Health, Road, as matters Transport and Public Works, in conjunction with the Council of Governors, do undertake a survey to ascertain the specific amenities required but not available on the existing highways, such as satellite medical clinics, fire trucks, and ambulances, as well as identify the most convenient locations to develop.
To transact the business of the day. Clerk, kindly proceed to call the first order.
Now, here, what is,
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honorable Senators, can you have your seat, please? Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon a visiting delegation from the Parliamentary Service Board of the Kingdom of Eswatini. They are in Kenya on a 2-day benchmarking visit with the Parliamentary Service Commission. The delegation is led by the President of the Senate of Eswatini. Honorable Senators, I request each member of the delegation to be upstanding when called out so that you may be acknowledged in the Senate traditional way. 1, Madam Lindiwe Dilamini, President of the Senate of Eswatini. Senator Mufatwa Dilamini, the Senator of the Senate of Eswatini. Honorable Victor Malambe, Member of the House of Assembly. Mr. Benedict Saba, Clerk to Parliament, Parliament of Eswatini. Mr. Jebulile Maswana, CEO, Eswatini Water Services Corporation Board and Member of the Parliamentary Service Board. Ms. Bisile Ndlovu, Member of the Parliamentary Service Board. Mr. Lunga Dilamini, Legal Counsel, Parliament of Eswatini. Lungile Siaya, Personal Secretary to the President of the Senate of Eswatini. Mr. Patrick Munisi, Director, Millennium Projects. Mr. Philip Maseko, Project Manager, Millennium Projects, Ministry of Economic Planning. Mrs. Elena Dilamini, Architect. Mr. Stephen Dilamini, Architect. Ms. Nikose Fayo Masuku, Millennium Projects. Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation and wish you a fruitful visit here in Parliament. I thank you. Honorable Senators, I will allow Senator Boni to make welcoming remarks, and thereafter I will also welcome Senator Mwaruma to also extend words of welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's an honor and privilege for me to welcome our friends and fellow Africans from South Africa, Republic of Eswatini. I want to say welcome, and I want to send you to give President King Mswati III our greetings. And you tell them that when you are being welcomed to the Senate, the senator who was speaking does not come from the Nguni tribe of Eswatini. However, I come from the Nguni-like tribe of Kenya. We are the Bantus. When you migrated from Western Congo, we remained here and you went down to South Africa. So don't finish the gold in South Africa, share it with us. We are children of the same nation. And with those remarks, Mr. Speaker, sir, because I speak Nguni, allow me to tell them, Unjani.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity you've given to me to welcome our friends from South Africa to the Senate of Kenya. The Senate of Kenya, according to our Constitution, Article 96, is supposed to defend a devolution. We gave ourselves a new constitution in 2010, and the work that we do is to defend devolution. Welcome to the Senate of Kenya. I know at the end of the day, you will have learned about how we run our business in Kenya. And I know at one point we'll come to South Africa to come and revenge, so to speak, so that you also see how we do things in South Africa. Welcome so much, and when you go back, say hi to the King. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Maruma. There is a very big difference between the Kingdom of Eswatini and South Africa. Next order, clerk.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
The Leader of Majority, kindly proceed to present your petition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 232-1, hereby to present a petition to the Senate submitted by the Kipsigis Community Clan organizations and citizens of the Republic of Kenya and residents of Kericho County. As you are aware, Mr. Speaker, under Article 119(1) of the Constitution, and I quote, "Every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including enacting, amending, or repealing any legislation." End of quote. The salient issues raised in the petition are as follows, Mr. Speaker. A, that the British colonial government forcefully took away the Kipsigis ancestral land during the colonial period, and that 1, there was no compensation to the Kipsigis community for the land taken for settlement by the British. Instead, the Kipsigis people became squatters and forced to provide cheap labor to the British settlers. 2, after the First World War, the colonial government forcefully evicted the Kipsigis community from their ancestral land around Kericho, Kerenga, and Tagabi estates and the whole of their African highlands, so as to give it to the British soldiers in the name of British East African Disabled Officers Colony. 3, the forcefully taken away land includes Unilever Tea, Brookborn, or now Ekatera, James Finlay, which was then African Highlands, George Williamson, in charge of Changoy and Lesla, Sotik Tea, Sotik Highlands, Kaisugu Tea, Mau Tea, Koru and Fortenan Farms, Cap Normans, Kabianga Tea and Tinga Farms, among others. When Kenya gained independence in 1963, the land forcefully taken from the Kipsigis community continued to be held and used by those who forcefully acquired it during the colonial administration. That the Kipsigis community is seeking redress in the form of compensation and an apology by the British government for the damage caused in the forceful eviction and use of their land. D, the Kipsigis community lodged a claim with the NLC in 2017, that's a National Land Commission. However, disagreements arose on some of the recommendations made by the commissions as the community members were not involved in negotiations. E, the petitioners have forwarded the matter to the relevant authorities for consideration, but the response has been unsatisfactory. That none of the issues raised in this petition are pending before any court of law or any other legal body. 4, consequently, the petitioners pray to the Senate as follows: that you hear and consider this petition, that you assist in following up lawsuits against the British colonial government for compensation and a formal apology. 3, that you intervene in ensuring that the necessary institutions, bodies, and review all land laws, regulations put in place by the British colonial government that are discriminatory towards indigenous African communities, and lawfully return the land to the Kipsigis community to be registered as a Kipsigis community group of Ts. 4, intervenes in resolution of the disputed recommendations made by the NLC on the matter. And finally, takes any measures or recommendations that the Senate may deem appropriate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 237, I shall now allow comments, observations, or clarifications in relation to the petition for not more than 30 minutes. Senator Gloria.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to just say that we were actually in Kericho this past weekend on a separate matter, but that actually touches on the issues that are being raised in this petition. We went there to investigate with the Senate Labour Committee. We went there to investigate on matters sex for work as per the BBC expose. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that as we actually interrogated the victims and the stakeholders of this whole tea farming industry, we found out that most of it is actually pegged on historical injustices, some of them coming from issues such as the forceful taking over of land of different communities. Mr. Speaker, when we were there, we tried to talk to these companies that have been listed here. We were at Finlay's, we were at Ekatare, and we tried to see if there's a middle ground, if there's some conversation that can be had in form of how the community can benefit from this tea farming. And Mr. Speaker, I am not afraid to say that the feedback that we got was very negative, in the sense that, Mr. Speaker, openly speaking, I think we are back in colonial era when it comes to the tea farming activities down in Kericho. I saw with my own 2 eyes how most of the issues on welfare, most of the issues that are being raised by the residents of Kericho, of those tea farms, were actually being ignored. We had conversations on communities talking about the land used to be theirs, that they don't understand how it went from one hand to the other hand, and ever since they have actually been impacted by poverty because it is a resource that they were relying on, and suddenly now they had to work on the farms as employees as opposed to the landowners. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this. As we are looking into this petition and other matters surrounding these issues that have been raised in this petition, Mr. Speaker, I think it is imperative that the companies that have been listed here in this petition, that the companies that have actually now been highlighted in form of the injustices, the historical injustices to the Kipsigis community and the communities around the tea farming, it is time, Mr. Speaker, that they are summoned to this house, that they actually come here to answer on several matters within the petition. And Mr. Speaker, it's not just an issue of summoning them within a certain committee, the Labour Committee or the Agriculture Committee or the Lands Committee. Mr. Speaker, the issues that are being raised touch on all the committees of this House. So, Mr. Speaker, as you look into where this will go, I urge you, if there is an opportunity, if there is a way under our standing orders, Mr. Speaker, you know I'm new to Senate, so I will need some guidance. But if there is a way that these companies are actually summoned to the floor of the House on a plenary session to actually answer on several matters, land injustices included there, sex for work, a lot of gender-based violence that is there because of the negligence of the company policies, Mr. Speaker. There's a lot of negligence in terms of how the women are being treated in these farms, Mr. Speaker, and it ties back down to these colonial practices, Mr. Speaker. And it seems, and it appears as though back in these farms, we are back to the colonial era, which is no longer an independent state in these farms. The injustices, the torture, the criminal activities that are undergoing there under the supervision of some of our own Kenyans who are walking around as directors, Mr. Speaker. I think this is a very serious issue, and please look at it holistically, and I urge you, Mr. Speaker, let us summon these companies to the floor of the House and have a plenary session so that we can delve deep into interrogating the issues of land injustices, interrogating the issues of gender-based violence, and interrogating the issues of how these plantations are actually operating as if we are back in the colonial era, Mr. Speaker. Thank you so much for the opportunity to weigh in on this matter.
Senator Chirange.
Mr. Speaker, from the onset, the petition that has been brought by Senator Aaron Cheriat, Kericho and Majority Leader is a very serious petition. Land historical injustices continue to be the soft underbelly in terms of achieving universal rights in the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. And that is why the drafters and the intenders of the Constitution 2010 and Article 67, when they established National Land Commission, one of the core mandate, Mr. Speaker, sir, was initiating looking at land historical injustices. It is very sad that most of the lands in Kericho, Mr. Speaker, were awarded to the what we call champions of war at the expense of the indigenous or the native people of the Kipsigis community in Kericho County, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, in the last session, and I've said this before, that there should be a deliberate effort, and even through budget policy statement, there was supposed to be repatriation and compensation of abuse of human rights, including land historical injustice of 10 billion, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to appeal that the committee, Mr. Speaker, that should look at this matter, should look at all ensemble, because I know in northern Kenya, or sorry, the coast where, Mr. Speaker, you come from, also Nandi, Bomet, Kericho, all those areas, Mr. Speaker, including Kisii and Nyamira, where you see swaths of tea estate. Across, Mr. Speaker, those lands were forcibly taken from the owners, Mr. Speaker. And I continue to say the tea that is taken across Europe, Mr. Speaker, continues to be stained by the blood of our forefathers who fought against forceful eviction from their land. And this is human rights issue. It is again, Mr. Speaker, when the Senate in the last session adopted, in conclusion, adopted the land historical injustices against the Talai community both in Nandi and in Kericho, Mr. Speaker, we needed, and I want to propose, as the committee looks at this, that the Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, should provide mutual legal assistance to the people of Kipsigis, Mr. Speaker, to pursue justice at the inns of London and other corridors, including ICC, Mr. Speaker, or even United International Human Rights Organization. They should be funded through what we call mutual legal assistance by providing resources and necessary advocates, Mr. Speaker. One of the resolution of land historical justice of Talai, which the Senate adopted, and it is on record and answered of the Senate, was compensation from the British government, Mr. Speaker. As the Senator of Nandi, I have written to Her Excellency Jane Marriott. The British Embassy, Mr. Speaker, has not even responded or acknowledged my letter or email, but I can see the ambassador is available to host TikTokers, to host Twitters and social influencers and social content, when we should be driving the hardware of human rights, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I'll be requesting through your office that the ambassadors through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Missions, that this is a serious matter that can not only be handled by the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, but can be handled in mutual agreement with the embassies that we're having, Mr. Speaker. So I was very disappointed. The British Embassy decided not to acknowledge, not even to write, not even to host those who are saying, Mr. Speaker, and have a discussion. We are not saying anyone is guilty. We want to have a discussion on land historical injustices and how these families and communities can be compensated, Mr. Speaker. Public apology should be issued to Tatalai and Kipsigis community, Mr. Speaker, and other Kenyans, including those who are in coast, Mr. Speaker. And number 3, apart from mutual equal assistance, public apology, and the final one, Mr. Speaker, is the compensation to the surviving dependents and beneficiaries, Mr. Speaker, of the Kipsigis community. Therefore, I support this petition, and I hope it shall be expedited within 60 days and have answers, Mr. Speaker. And I hope through your office, some of us who have direct interest on land historical injustices can be allowed to sit in some of those committees and give further clarification and answers when the necessary agencies appear, Mr. Speaker. With those very many remarks, I thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Senator Wamatinga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also rise to support the petition and indeed state in no unmistakable terms historical injustices in this country have far too long been spoken about, but they've lacked political commitment to address them. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we talk about the Kipsigis, it is the same story. We talk about the communities living around the colonial villages around the Mount Kenya region, people who were forcibly evicted from their homes because some colonial masters felt that they were a threat to the peace of that country then. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is so unfortunate that 60 years after independence, we still continue talking about colonial villages. It is equally unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, sir, that those people who were forcibly evicted from their land after we got independence, those pieces of lands were taken by a few individuals who became the new colonial masters, and they are continuing to enjoy the fruit and the sweat of those who went to fight for independence at the expense of their offsprings. Mr. Speaker, sir, as we speak about the Kipsigis and addressing the historical injustices that were melted to the Kenyans, we must not forget, Mr. Speaker, sir, that unless we come into terms with our history, with our past, we will never find peace. You go to the coast province, it is the same story. You go to the western, all around the country, the story is the same. Historical injustices melted by some colonial masters who today purport to be the masters of democracy and who purport to lecture us how to move our country forward, while they know that we still continue suffering under the division, under the oppression acts that they committed to us. It is the high time, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we as a country stood up and said, the enough is enough, we must get away out of this. I do remember, Mr. Speaker, sir, having lived for over 20 years in Germany, I saw the Jewish who were oppressed by the Nazis. They did seek legal redress and they got it for the oppression that they got. We as a country, Mr. Speaker, sir, we must also deliberately and with concerted effort attempt to address some of these issues. We know that land is a very, very emotive issue across the country, because when some were fighting in the forests, those who are the collaborators, Mr. Speaker, sir, they joined hands, grabbed everything that was left, and today we know that almost half of Kenya is owned by a few families. It is sad, Mr. Speaker, sir, listening to the injustices that are done, sex for work, thief across the country, and we must make the resolve as a house, as politicians, as the leaders of this country, to move forward a step further and say that these historical injustices must come to an end. Mr. Speaker, sir, I therefore think that we as the House of Senate, we must go back to our counties and try to bring our people together and once and for all address these historical injustices. I therefore support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Tabitha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this petition by our Majority Leader, Senator Aaron Cheruiyot. Mr. Speaker, I want to state that at this moment in 2023, it's actually very sad to be in a position discussing colonial issues, because we we are at a time that we should be behind these issues, and it really saddens with the reports that I've also had from my colleagues' sentiments and input that state that issues of land where our people have been actually put off from where they've been living for so long. At the same time, they are employees of these particular farms that are owned by these white people, and at the same time, they are still being harassed by the same people who've actually ended up employing them. Then what next for them if these are the same people that have taken them to the positions that they are? I want to support and state that this issue should not just be even within the Kipsigis people area, the region of Kipsigis, but it should actually go beyond any other regions that we have still the same crisis, to co-join the same issue. And also, if Mr. Speaker, you could allow that this issue be addressed by different committees, so that the bigger picture is to be addressed, so as to get a long-term solution on these particular matters. As Senator Omatinga says, I support that it's the high time us as the Africans, we stop this element of always wanting to depend on the Western in terms of how they want to come and dictate us, our nations. We need to stand firm as African regions and soldier on and fight on for what is right for our own people, and to stop the dictatorship of what the British colonials and any other Western countries want to come and dictate to our people and to our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kinyua.
Asante Bwana Spika kunipa fursa hii. Nataka kuunga mkono dua liloletwa na kiongozi walio wengi katika jumba hili. Bwana Spika, niseme ya kwamba masuala ya mashamba ni masuala nyeti ambayo yakuwa yakiathiri watu wa hapa nchini Kenya. Ukiangalia katika ombi ama dua ile wakisema ya kwamba kuhusu watu wa Kipsigis, wale ambao walinyang'anywa mashamba yao, sasa wanaishi maisha ya kichochole, ilhali yale mashamba ni yao, Bwana Spika. Na si watu wa Kipsigis peke yao, Bwana Spika. Ukitembea sehemu nyingi za Nyeri, Kiambu, Murang'a, Laikipia, unapata watu ambao walikuwa wakiishi katika mashamba yao, lakini hawa wakoloni walipokuja, Bwana Spika, waliwafukuza, wakawatimua katika mashamba yao, wakawapeleka katika vijiji, Bwana Spika. Wakabaki wanawafanyia hawa wazungu kazi katika mashamba yao, lakini hata wakati huu tunapoongea, Bwana Spika, hawa watu hawajapewa fidia, bado wanaendelea kusononeka na kupata haya majanga. Bwana Spika, kile ambacho kinanishangaza zaidi ni baada ya miaka zaidi ya 60 baada ya sisi kujinyakulia uhuru, unapata bado sisi tunaadhiliwa na ukoloni mamboleo, Bwana Spika. Mtu yoyote akimwona mzungu anaona yeye anafaa zaidi. Bwana Spika, hata inashangaza, hata ukitembea katika barabara zetu, mzungu akiwa amevaa nusu uchi, unapata watu wetu wanavaa nusu uchi, wanasema huo ndio kitu inaitwa sijui fashion, Bwana Spika. Lakini hatujivunii. Hata sisi wenyewe katika bunge hili ukiangalia, Bwana Spika, tumeadhiliwa na huo ukoloni mamboleo. Tunavaa suti. Mtu akivaa nguo za Kiafrika inaonekana yeye kana kwamba yeye ni mtu ambao yuko nyuma, hajifahamu na hajielewi, Bwana Spika. Hata Bwana Spika, hivi ninapoongea hapa nikiongea kwa lugha ya Kiswahili, naonekana ya kwamba kwa sababu siongei kwa lugha ya Kiingereza, hiyo sio ati mimi sijastaarabika, mimi sijafika, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu siongei kwa lugha ambayo wamefunzwa, watu tayari wameadhiliwa na ile ukoloni mamboleo, Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo unapata hata shamba ambazo ni zetu, Bwana Spika, badala ya kuchukua, hata kama ni kununua tutanunua, kwa sababu Bwana Spika sisi tutafuata katiba iliyowekwa, kama ni zile shamba tuzinunue kwa njia iliyo sawa sawa, unapata hapana. Bado tungetaka hawa wageni ambao wamekuja hapa nchini, Bwana Spika, tunawapatia hadhi ambazo hazifai kwao. Bwana Spika, hata ukitembea katika banki, Bwana Spika, ikiwa umepiga foleni, paje mzungu, Bwana Spika, atapita aende ahudumiwe na wewe na ni nchi yako, Bwana Spika. Lakini ukienda katika nchi zao, hata watu wengi ambao wametembea katika nchi zile, Bwana Spika, na kumbuka, Bwana Spika, tulitembea na seneta ambaye sitamtaja hapa katika nchi za Uraibuni, Bwana Spika. sisi tulionekana sisi ni kama hatufai, sisi ni kama nyani, kwa sababu Bwana Spika, kwa sababu ya rangi ya ngozi zetu Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo ni vizuri kamati ambayo itakuwa ikishughulikia haya mambo iyashughulikie kwa undani kabisa Bwana Spika, na siwe na uoga Bwana Spika. Sisi tofauti ya mimi na mzungu, hakuna tofauti Bwana Spika. Tofauti iliyoko pengine ni rangi. Na watu ukiangalia Bwana Spika, ukitembea hapa unapata ndugu zangu wengine wanajaribu kubadilisha rangi zao ndio akae ni kama wale wazungu Bwana Spika, kwa sababu sisi hatujiamini Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo ningeomba kamati ambayo itashughulikia, na ni kamati nyingi ambazo zimehusika pale Bwana Spika, ziangalie haya mambo kwa kindani. Kama ni kutembelea hale mashamba ambayo yamenyakuliwa kutoka kwetu Bwana Spika, waangalie kwa kindani, na si pale peke yake Bwana Spika, hata kwetu Laikipia kuna wazungu Bwana Spika ambao wengine wanawasumbua wa Afrika Bwana Spika. Ni juzi tu nakumbuka, hata ijapokuwa ni muda mrefu kidogo, kuna mzungu ambaye nakumbuka watu wakitembea katika shamba lake alikuwa akiwapiga risasi Bwana Spika. Na inaonekana hakuna chochote ambacho kimefanywa Bwana Spika, kwa sababu sisi tuko katika nchi yetu na hatuamini ya kwamba nchi hii ni yetu Bwana Spika. Tulipewa na Mungu na tunapaswa kuishi hapa bila kumwogopa mtu yoyote, kwa sababu sisi ni nchi huru Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo kamati ambayo itashughulikia ni kamati ya mashamba, ni kamati ya ukulima, ni kamati ya mambo ya labor Bwana Spika, waangalie na waulize maswali haya magumu. Kwa nini sisi hatujiamini Bwana Spika? Ndio tuweze kuondoa ukoloni mambo leo Bwana Spika, na tuweze kujiamini, kwa sababu Mwafrika, Muingereza, mtu wa rangi yote, Mhindi, sisi sote mbele ya Mwenyezi Mungu, sisi sote ni sawa. Nikikatwa damu yangu nikiwa mtu mweusi, kukatwe mzungu, damu zote Bwana Spika zitakuwa nyekundu. Asante Bwana Spika.
Senator Esi. What is your point of order, Senator Boni?
Mr. Speaker, I do want to interrupt our colleague, but we have all followed his debate. And clearly, Mr. Speaker, it borders on xenophobic language. Would it be in our practice as Parliament that in our record we allow debate that suggests prejudices against other communities? And I say this on standing order that speaks to the content of speech.
First, Senator Boni, you ought to have risen on a point of order while Senator Kenywa was still speaking. And therefore, raising on a point of order after the speech has been made cannot be sustained. Secondly, if I heard Senator Kenywa correctly, he was merely trying to lay a basis of what is happening currently. That one, as Africans, we have embraced so much Western culture to the extent that we feel it is more superior compared to the African culture. And therefore, we are victims of our own omissions and actions. That was his observation. I don't think it borders on what you're stating. He has not in any way called upon Kenyans to take out and drive any community out of this country. Far from it. I think his speech is well within the petition that is before us. Senator Esi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to rise to support the petition by the Senate Majority Leader, Senator Aaron Cheruiyot. I might not be coming from the green county of Kericho, but the people of Kericho border us from where I come from in Kisii. The Kisii people are very fortunate because of the initiatives of the likes of Morangiti, who fought hard in defending community land and community interests. But on the issue of the Kipsigis in Kericho, it's really sad, and I do not know why and how long we have to speak. Because the people, the remaining group of the Kipsigis people whose land was grabbed have filed several appeals in seeking redress for the issues they are complaining about, and nothing is being done to that regard. Are the Kipsigis children of a lesser God? Because I saw the people of Mau Mau were compensated, and in one of the responses that was filed by the British government is that they compensated Mau Mau fighters, and that's an excuse they are giving for not compensating the Kipsigis people. So I do not want not only the Kipsigis people, but we have so many other marginalized communities whose land was taken by the British government, who we now want that they compensate and listen to these issues that are being brought about. Some of the issues whose land was some of the people whose land was taken now are homeless and have now remained as second-class citizens in their own country. Because, Mr. Speaker, you can see most of these people have now retreated to be like the guys who are picking tea in those farms. Picking tea in the farms of people who took your own land. You have nothing to call yours. What example are we setting to the young generation in this country who also want to possess land from their ancestors who initially had land? So, Mr. Speaker, as I speak today, and in the spirit of good neighborhood from Kisii, where I come from, I feel like the Senator Aaron Cheriot is very correct when he brings those concerns to this House, and the people of Kipsigis deserve compensation because they are not children of a lesser God. Thank you.
Senator Murango.
Asante sana mstahiki Spika. Pia nitaongea kwa Kiswahili kama mwenzangu Senator Kenywa wa Laikipia. Mstahiki Spika, kwanza ningempa kongole kiongozi wa wengi kwa kuleta mswada huu ambao unahusisha jamii ya Kipsigis. Na niseme ya kwamba pia sisi mali nimetoka pale Kirinyaga tuko na tambu pia ya mashamba, lakini yetu ni tofauti kidogo mstahiki Spika. Ya kwanza, eneo la Mwea wakati ukoloni ilikuwa imefanywa kama ni jela ya wale watu waliokuwa wanapigania uhuru. Na baada ya uhuru kupatikana, watu wenye waliachwa pale wa Kirinyaga na wengineo waliachwa katika ile mashamba ambayo mpaka wa saa hii wanakaa kama wenyewe na si wenyewe, kwa sababu hatimiliki bado hawajapewa. Katika hii serikali yetu ya Kenya Kwanza, kitu ya kwanza tulisema tutazingatia na kuhifadhi heshima ya mahuru kutambu ambao wanaitwa kwa Kiingereza hustlers. Mstahiki Speaker, nyanyangu mwenyewe alikuwa akiishi pale mpaka kufa kwake akiwa na miaka 115. Mpaka saa hii jamii zinazoishi pale wamezaana pale, wamezikana pale, lakini hata wale watoto wenyewe wamezaliwa pale, babu zao hawakuwa na hati miliki. Kwa hivyo hata vita nyingi ambazo zinatokea pale ni kwa sababu watu wanapigana, kwa sababu mashamba haiwezi gawika, hati miliki haijawahi patikana. Shamba lingine linaitwa South Ngariama, liko hati miliki haijawahi patikana. Kuna ingine inaitwa Mwea Irrigation Scheme, hati miliki haijawahi patikana. Mstahiki Speaker, tukizingatia serikali ya Kenya Kwanza, tukipatia hati miliki kwa wale ambao tayari wako katika mashamba yao, na pia kuangalia maslahi ya wale watu ambao hawakulipa fidia kama hawa Kipsigis, pia kuna maumau walimbaki, nadhani tutakuwa tunawafanyia haki na kurejesha heshima kwa wale watu ambao walihusika katika kutupigania uhuru ambao mpaka siku ya leo tunaupigania. Asante sana mstahiki Speaker.
Senator Lomenan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this golden opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I support the petition by the leader of majority, my friend Cheriot. Mr. Speaker, many communities in Kenya deserve the compensation because of the harm created by the colonialists who departed from us, but some of them still exist. Mr. Speaker, I really support my colleagues because what happened after independence, many people, many communities lost their land. And after realizing that, they took time to claim their land. And what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, it is a high time to committees that are concerned in compensation, in analyzing the issue of historical injustice. It is the high time, Mr. Speaker, those committees take their own time to analyze that issue and make sure the justice, the communities that lost justice prevail. Mr. Speaker, I have thought critically that we are talking about historical injustice that happened by colonialists. Those people colonized Africa, colonized Kenya. But what I'm observing at the experience I have now, Mr. Speaker, what is happening now, the current historical injustice, Mr. Speaker, are more worse than that one of colonialists. Because most communities have lost their land just because, not because of the white people, the so-called Western, Mr. Speaker. They have lost their land. Historical injustice have just caused by the neighboring communities. I set an example, Mr. Speaker. What is happening now? The alarming situation of insecurity now. If you are very keen, Mr. Speaker, you will find the biggest problem of this insecurity is the issue of land acquisition. Some communities decide to expand themselves because they want to imitate, they want to be colonialist, neo-colonialism. They want to be colonialist. So they expand gradually, and the other communities become the second community. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to leader of majority and the leadership of this Senate, I want them to be very keen to realize to call a spoon a spoon or call a spade, because there are communities that have lost land. Currently, they have lost their land not because of the colonialists. It's because of the conventional fight that is happening now. They started from cattle rustling. They gradually advanced to land because in lack of pasture and water. When you find land and water or grazing pasture in a neighboring community, so you own it by gun, you own it by force, meaning that the community, the current community that lives there do not deserve. So what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, I will ask this Senate to form a committee that will take time to plot the boundaries that were plotted by the colonialists. It seems that people have forgotten. I ask the leaders of this Senate, take your own time to remind most of the community, to remind the boundaries, because they seem they have forgotten their boundaries. That is why we are fighting every day. People are losing life, people are losing land, people are losing property because of this issue of dispute, land dispute. And I know the Kipsigis suffer the same thing with the Maasai. And this is the issue, Mr. Speaker. It is just good to say the truth. We are just suffering as leaders here, yet we are bleeding in our hearts. This problem of land is really paining us. Mr. Speaker, just the way my brother Senate Cherengei said, what is happening, Mr. Speaker? We have Africacentrism and we have Eurocentrism. The perception, the African perceptions are denied. We are denied to use our perspective to judge ourselves. Instead, they use Western Eurocentrism perspectives to judge Africacentrism. We were created in the image of God, Mr. Speaker, and we bear the prescription of God. No one who is better than the other. It doesn't know the color doesn't matter. The contents matters. Because, Mr. Speaker, even if you analyze aesthetics, the study of beauty, there is beauty, accidental beauty, and there is intellectual beauty. With accidental beauty, Mr. Speaker, he did not apply to be the son or daughter of a parent. It happened accidentally. You found yourself, you are a son of a Homer, you are a son of a reasonable woman. So it wasn't a mistake. He did not apply for it. And Mr. Speaker, so you don't blame. We cannot apply the Western perception in African perception. We have won our perception. Even if it is scientists, Mr. Speaker, I have, Mr. Speaker, to convince, even if it's the whole world, that the people, the community I come from, are the great scientists, because they were the first one to make spears out of the nail. I have never seen any Western world using a nail to make a spear. I have never, meaning that, Mr. Speaker, we neglect our natural intelligence for the sake of perception of imitation, and the imitation is limitation. We have to capitalize on our perception. We have to capitalize on our intelligence. So, Mr. Speaker, something that I want committee to be sure of. Mr. Speaker, it is true, Kenya is a republic. But when you see inside it, Mr. Speaker, you find colonialists left. But the land that colonialists left were inherited by the African. So when they inherited, they just let the status go, Mr. Speaker. That is why what is happening now, Mr. Speaker, we have this land, this nation belongs to all of us. The way my the way Senator said, and we deserve every cake in this nation. Whatever cake is there, Mr. Speaker, we have all to enjoy. It is not, if it is our time to eat, Mr. Speaker, if it is our time to eat, that one is not biblical. We have to be fair, Mr. Speaker.
Sorry to interrupt, Senator Lominen. Kindly wind up your thoughts, because your colleagues would wish to also make contributions. Thank
yes,
you.
Mr. Speaker. I finally say, Mr. Speaker, as we analyze the issue of past historical injustice, we should see keenly, critically, the conventional historical injustice. That is what, Mr. Speaker, I say. Thank you.
Honourable Senators, you'll allow me to interrupt the contributions on that petition, because we have students and from Kirinyaga, and they have to start their journey back to Kirinyaga. Honourable Senators, in the public gallery, we have 98 students accompanied by 6 teachers from St. Mary's Kagio Boys High School in Kirinyaga County, who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on my own behalf and on behalf of the Senate, wish them a fruitful visit. I will allow Senator Murango to give a short word of welcome, and then we shall resume our contribution on the petition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving this opportunity, and I'm happy today I'll be able to introduce a school from my county the right way. The last time it was not very good. Mr. Speaker, Kagio Secondary School comes from Kirinyaga County, and it's located in Mutihi ward, that is Mwea constituency. Mr. Speaker, most likely the bananas and the fruits you eat when you're in Nairobi and in Mombasa, 66%, I can assure you, it must have come from Kagio, because we also host one of the biggest market there. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage the student of St. Mary Kagio Boys Secondary School, that is doable, and if Morango is the senator for Kirinyaga, I can assure them they can also become great, even more than a senator, if they do everything right. I also want to congratulate the teachers for planning and bringing the students here, and I can only wish them their best. I know we'll meet outside there before they leave. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Senators, looking at the queue of senators wishing to contribute to the petition, it's fairly long, and therefore allow me to limit the time per speaker. Let us each speak at not more than 3 minutes, so that at least all the senators who are on the queue can have a chance to say something in contribution to the petition. Senator Mandago.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the petition by the Senator of Kericho and our Majority Leader, Aaron Cheruiyot, on the historical injustices and the compensation required for those who are affected by colonialism. Mr. Speaker, successive administrations in this country, right from independence, have failed to address the issue of historical injustices that arose from the process of colonization of this country. Mr. Speaker, if you look at this nation, starting from the coast, Mr. Speaker, in the independent Kenya of 60 years, we are still discussing issues of squatters on their own land with absentee landlords who grab the land from the citizens and the natives of those places. And Mr. Speaker, successive administration, I don't know whether through cowardice or worried not to please the former colonial masters, we've never been able to address that matter. If you look at the entire Rift Valley, Mr. Speaker, it is a region that natives were driven out so that the whites, particularly the British and the Boers then, could occupy very prime, fertile agricultural lands. The most unfortunate thing, Mr. Speaker, is that even after independence, the same colonialists now mutated and call themselves investors, international companies, citizens, and owners of the same land. Mr. Speaker, it is time as a nation, we cannot move forward without addressing the injustices that have been meted by Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, if you look at a county like Laikipia, 60% of Laikipia is occupied by ranches that are owned by the British, Mr. Speaker. The same colonialists who dispossessed the people who lived in Laikipia today they still own 60%. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, some of the challenges that we need to address, like cattle rustling as a result of pasture and water, cannot be addressed because one rancher owns 1 million acres, Mr. Speaker. And the citizens are being confined to the islands, they are being confined to the hilly parts, while the British are game hunting in our own land, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you look at...
Senator, your time is up. Senator Agnes Kavindu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, kwa kunipa fursa hii nikaweze kuchangia. Kwanza nataka kumpa kongole Majority Leader Senator Cheruiyot kwa kuleta huu mjadala ama motion. Bwana Speaker, hakika si Kipsigis tu ambako kuna shida ya kama matokeo ya wakoloni, lakini karibu Kenya kila pahali kuna shida. Maana wakati tulikuwa under colon, Bwana Speaker, walichukua mashamba karibu kila mahali. Pale waliona mashamba mazuri walichukua. Na nikizungumza juu ya Ukambani, kuna street inaitwa Muindi Mbingu Street hapa Nairobi. Hao mpaka waleo wanakutananga mahali wakidai ng'ombe zao ambazo ziliuliwa na hao masettlers. Wakati waliseto huko wakalete ng'ombe za Fresians na wakasema zile ng'ombe za locals zote ziwawe kwa sababu zitaambukiza ng'ombe zao ugonjwa na ng'ombe zao zitakufa. Kwa hivyo ng'ombe zote zilikuwa katika area hiyo na eneo hiyo walikuja, zote zikauliwa na hao watu mpaka waleo, mpaka wengine walikufa, wengine wako hai na wengine wajukuu wao na vijukuu vya vijukuu wanaendelea kudai ng'ombe zao. Na kwa hivyo Bwana Speaker, hakika ni haki au watu wapate haki yao. Wale wanadai mashamba yao wapate mashamba yao, wapate title deed zao, na wale wanadai kama hao wanadai ng'ombe pia wapate ng'ombe zao. Kuna wengine wa maumau ambao walipoteza hata mashamba yao huko kwetu na mpaka wale wanadai serikali ya Kenya iweze kuwapatia sehemu waweze kuishi kama watu ambao walipokonywa kule ambapo walikuwa wanaishi. Bwana Speaker, nina support hii na ninaomba ile kamati ambayo itapelekwa kwake wafanye kazi na bidii ili tuweze kuona hii haki ikitendeka. Mara nyingi Bwana Speaker, tunalete motions, tunalete statements, tunalete petitions na zinakaa sana bila kujibiwa. Mara nyingi hata miaka 5 inaisha, hiyo ina expire, mtu akirudi tena labda ndio anakuja kurudisha tena. Kwa hivyo naomba Bwana Speaker, hata committee tuwajibike tuweze kufanya ile kazi ambayo tunastahili kufanya kwa haraka. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Senator Mohamed Chute.
Shukran sana Bwana Speaker. Ningependa kushukuru Senator Majority Leader kwa kuleta petition hii leo. Bwana Speaker, hii petition kiangalia mambo yake inaongea mambo ya zamani. Mimi nimetoka county inaitwa Marsabit. Marsabit County zamani tulikuwa naitwa NFD, Northern Frontier District. Tulifungiwa huko kabisa na wakoloni na tukaitwa marginalized community. Tukatolewa jina ambaye ni kama watu disabled. Baada ya kuitwa marginalized community, serikali ya Kenya ikapata uhuru, Rais marehemu Jomo Kenyatta akaingia. Bado tukafungiwa huko NFD, tukaitwa NFD, tukaitwa marginalized. Serikali ya Rais Moi akaingia, bado marginalized. Serikali ya Kibaki akatuita marginalized. Serikali ya Uhuru Kenyatta marginalized. Na mpaka saa hii hiyo marginalization haijaisha. Zamani, Bwana Spika, mtu kutoka Marsabit hawezi kuruhusiwa kupita hata Isiolo. Unapata special permit. Wakoloni wamesumbua sisi. Bwana Spika, saa hii vile tunaongea, ardhi inaitwa Turkana. Watu fulani wazungu wameangalia atlas, map ya dunia, wakajua upepo mzuri yuko mahali inaitwa Sarima, Turkana. Ni wazungu wamekuja, wamechukua ardhi yote. Ardhi kutoka hapa paka Nakuru ni kama sehemu kupitia Nanyuki, unapita mpaka Machakos, unazunguka paka Kajiado, imechukuliwa. Bwana Spika, hiyo mahali community wanaita huko, wanakaa huko ni community Rendile, ni la Isamis constituency. Bwana Spika, hao watu malisho yao ngamia, mbuzi na ng'ombe wanalishwa kule. Bwana Spika, saa hii vile tunavyoongea, hawa watu wetu wanaongea mambo ya kipsigisi ya zamani. Waafrika wenyewe wametuletea hiyo koloni, ardhi imechukuliwa, hatuna mahali ya kugrace ardhi yetu. Bwana Spika, wale watu wanafanya kazi huko ndani, wazungu wamefika huko, carpenter anatolewa South Africa, ndio anakuwa manager ya camp mzima. Mason
I'm afraid, Senator, your time is up. Senator Shakila Abdallah. Senator Shakila.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipatia hii nafasi. Kwanza nataka nimpongeze Majority Leader kwa kuleta huu mswada ambao ni mswada nyeti sana, Mheshimiwa Spika. Swala la ardhi linagusia kila eneo, kila sehemu katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Na masikitiko ni kwamba swala hili ni kama linaendelea kushindikana kutatulika kwa sababu kabla katiba mpya kuliwekwa tume ambayo ni ya National Land Commission ambayo kwamba inafaa kuzingatia na kusimamia shida za historical injustice za land. Lakini masikitiko ni kwamba tume hiyo imezembea. Wao wamekuwa ndio wakarabati wa ufisadi wa ardhi, na sasa hatuelewi hili tatizo litatatulika vipi. Ukiangalia Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi kwetu Lamu ndio IDPs wa kwanza ambao tulipigwa baada ya Kenya kupata uhuru wakati wa mashifta, na hatukupata haki zetu mpaka kufikia hii leo. Mheshimiwa Spika, vijiji 18 viliathirika, vikasambaratika, watu wakasambaratika. Hivi sasa sisi tunaitwa minority kwa sababu watu wetu walipigwa na wakasambaratika ulimwengu mzima kwa sababu ya hivyo vita vya mashifta, na ardhi zetu zikachukuliwa zikapewa ambao kwamba hawahusiki. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, hili swali la ardhi ni lazima, ikiwa serikali ina nia ya kutatua hili swali, ni lazima lihakikishe kwamba litaweka mikakati ya kuhakikisha wale ambao wamedhulumiwa haki zao za maardhi ziwe watapatiwa kwa njia mwafaka, kwa sababu kuna watu wanachukua fursa hiyo kuona kwamba kuna watu hawaelewi haki zao, hawana njia na mbinu za kupata zile title zao. Wengine wanachukua advantage, wanaenda wanajitolea matitle, na unakuta watu wanaenda kuvamia ardhi za wengine, zinavamiwa na wanaclaim wanataka wapimiwe, na ambapo kwamba kulingana na sharia haifai Kenya kufanywa vitendo kama hivyo. Lakini unakuta mambo mengine yanatokea kwenye county fulani ambazo kwamba huwezi kuyaona kwenye county zingine. Kwa nini iwe county zingine zinadhulumiwa haki zao na zingine wanapewa kikamilifu? Kwa hivyo tunaomba na tunataka hii shida itatuliwe kikamilifu, na hizi dhulma ambazo
Senator, your time is up. Senator Lenku Seki.
Asante mwenye Speaker kwa nafasi hii ambayo pia ningependa kuchangia mswada huu ambaye unahusiana na mambo ya ardhi. Ninajua kwamba natoka katika kaunti ya Kajiado ambaye ni kaunti ambaye ya watu wengi ambao wanaokaa pale ni Wamasai, na vile tunavyoelewa ya kwamba ardhi kubwa katika nchi ya Kenya inaweza kuwa kwamba iko na jina kubwa sana ya familia ya Kimasai ama jamii ya Kimasai. Ukipata kwamba county kama Laikipia, Narok, Kajiado na hata pande mingi kubwa sana ya pande hii ya Machakos ambaye Mheshimiwa Kavindu alizungumzia, hawa settlers ambaye ni British wakoloni hawa waliweza kuchukua mashamba haya bila kuzingatia hali ambayo wanataka watu wataweza kufaidikia ambaye ni wenyeji katika counties hizi. Mimi ningependa kuchangia hoja hii nikisema ya kwamba ni ukweli kabisa Mheshimiwa Haron Cheriot ambaye ni majority wetu kwamba amelete petition hii ili tuweze kuiangalia kwa kindani. Ukiangalia sehemu hizi kama pande hii ya Kajiado mahali mimi ninawakilisha, unapata kwamba kuna shida kubwa sana. Mheshimiwa Speaker, ukiangalia mahali kama kwa mfano Magadi ni mahali ambaye iko na mineral kama soda ash, na hii ni sehemu ambaye ni ward mzima, lakini hawa British colonies wameweza kuchukua hiyo ward yote kwa jumla na kuweka kama lease. Na hii project ya soda ash ambaye ni kitu kubwa sana ambaye ni mineral ambaye inatoka nchi hii kwenda katika nchi zingine, imechukuliwa na British, na jamii katika sehemu hiyo hawafaidiki chochote, mpaka county yenyewe haina faida, na ile faida kidogo ya ardhi ambaye county inaweza pata faida kidogo, mpaka sasa hivi county bado na struggle kutafuta zile rates kwa sababu wanakataa hata kulipa. Nataka kusema ya kwamba
I'm afraid, Senator, your time is up. Senator Wafula, please.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Speaker. Ningependa tu kushikilia hapo sehemu ama mwelekeo ambao kiongozi wa wengi amechukua, hususan changamoto, shida na unyanyasaji wa Wakenya ambao ulitekelezwa na wakoloni ama vizazi vya wakoloni ama Waafrika ambao wanaendeleza ukoloni mambo leo. Yale ambayo yanaendelea kule Kericho na sehemu mbalimbali humu nchini ni lazima yakome, na ni lazima serikali ya Kenya Kwanza ambayo kiongozi aliyo wengi ameleta hoja hii kwenye sakafu ya jumba la Senate, tuhakikishe kwamba wale ambao mashamba yao yalichukuliwa wapate haki yao. Kwa mfano, tulipokuwa tunaangalia kipindi cha BBC kikijadili gharama ya majani chai ambayo yanauzwa katika nchi za kigeni, makampuni ambayo yalinyakua mashamba haya hujipiga kifua na hivi kwamba kuendeleza udhalimu kwa kuleta mashine ambazo hata unyima wenyeji nafasi ya kuchuna majani chai yao wenyewe. Nadhani Mheshimiwa Speaker, ukoloni mambo leo haitakani kuendelea kamwe. Serikali ya nchi ya Kenya ndio hugharamia ama ina haki ya kunyakua mashamba popote kwa mujibu wa sheria. Iwapo wenyeji wamenyang'anywa mashamba kihistoria, mbona ni vigumu serikali Mheshimiwa William Ruto kuamka asubuhi mapema kwenye makazi yake ya kifahari ya kiserikali na kusema kwamba mashirika kama Finleys kesho asubuhi walete stakabadhi zao, mheshimiwa kiongozi wa wengi wathibitishe kama walipata haya mashamba kihalali ama hapana, mkataba wao ulikuwa upi, na kama mkataba huo haukuwa halisi lazima mambo yabadilike. Na mimi naamini mheshimiwa Spika, kama Biblia ilivyosema, miaka iliyoliwa na nzige lazima irudi. Wale watu ambao wako Kericho wa mashamba yao yalichukuliwa, lazima mashamba yao yarejeshwe. Wale ambao wamekuwa wakivuna matunda ya wenyewe hapa Mlima Kenya na viunga vyake, vile vile serikali ichukue hatua. Shida za Wakikuyu ambao walinyang'anywa mashamba ndizo hizo shida za watu wa bonde la Ufa walionyang'anywa mashamba, na uchungu ambao Wakamba wanapitia Kenya hii. Sasa haiwezi kuwa kuna wale ambao uchungu wao unamulikwa na serikali na wale ambao machozi yao ni kana kwamba yanachukuliwa kama machozi ya mamba. Mimi naomba serikali ichukue hatua kwamba Wakenya popote walipo, iwapo
Senator Tobiko Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the petition by the majority leader, Aaron Cheruiyot. Mr. Speaker, the British colonialists committed a lot of crimes against our communities in this country, Mr. Speaker. And up to date, Mr. Speaker, communities are still feeling the impact, the effect, the trauma of losing so much in the hands of the British colonialists. Mr. Speaker, the Maasai community lost over 1 million acres to the British colonialists, Nairobi included. Nakuru, Naivasha, many places, Mr. Speaker, where today we have the Dalamere farms, once, Mr. Speaker, our own very lands, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our communities need reparations from the British colonialists, and I think it is high time. The country has come of age to have the British pay for what our communities lost, Mr. Speaker. To date, the Laikipia Maasais are still feeling the effect of the losses of their ranches to the colonialists, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you see some of these people who are occupying those lands, and you wonder who are their grandparents, who are their generations in the past, they have nothing to show for the lands that they occupy today, Mr. Speaker. And our communities were sent to the reserves, Mr. Speaker, where people are congested, where today pastoralism is threatened because of such loss of land, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I support that all communities in Kenya we must go back into our history so that justice prevails. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me time. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support the petition by the majority leader. Mr. Speaker, I think the issue of the colonialists much on this side. The colonialist people who left to colonize this country have caused a lot of suffering up to date. Many Kenyans have been killed as a result of their own properties and defending their land. Many lands have been taken, that they have taken the best productive land. But today, Kenyans' population have increased, and most Kenyans are now still squatters in their own country. And therefore, they have also created, imaginary boundaries, where communities are every day fighting over boundaries that are not existing in the country. They have been told this area belongs to the community, community. This one belongs to other communities, and as I said, throughout and through, Kenyans are in conflict over land and land use and over natural resource use. Mr. Speaker, I think most of the British people who lived here, who took that big chunk of land, have now grown old, and many of them have even ceased to live, and they even died, and some of them will go to their countries. But the land is still under the custody of the British people. And it's a high time that we need now to reclaim back that land and to redistribute that land. We need at least a reparation for Kenyans, so the Kenyans can heal and that the Kenyans can also be able to benefit. As it is now, we are not even able to feed our country by people. Because the Kenyans have been
Majority Leader, you kindly consult in Lawton.
Mr. Speaker, I think
Senator speaking.
Majority Leader and his team, Mr. Speaker, so that the Kenyans can be healed even after the Wazungu is left. We got also Kenyan settlers, black men who took over the land. And today, many lands, the big land, chunk of lands is which actually underutilized, and therefore it's a high time that all idle lands should be taxed and should be reclaimed back. With those few remarks, I thank you, Speaker, and I support
Senator Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the petition by the majority leader. Mr. Speaker, listening to all the senators who have spoken, it is true, Mr. Speaker, this is a national problem. Almost every county, Mr. Speaker, has a challenge of this historical injustice, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue is not the knowledge of these historical injustices. I think the challenge, Mr. Speaker, is lack of seriousness and lack of policy by the subsequent governments on how to deal with this issue. Mr. Speaker, we've had this debate for the last 60 years. Several policies and, Mr. Speaker, debates in this House has been done. Mr. Speaker, I think it is a high time that this House, pursuant to Article 96 of the Constitution, should be able to come out very strongly through this petition and be able to resolve that this should come to an end, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the big parcels of land owned by the British in, say, Kericho and other areas, it has a term of lease, Mr. Speaker, in these farms. I want to propose a radical proposal, Mr. Speaker, that when the leases of this parcel of land, the terms come to an end, I think the government of our government, Mr. Speaker, should be able to reallocate these pieces of land. Mr. Speaker, if we put in place appropriate policy as a country as to how to deal with this historical injustice, Mr. Speaker, I think we can have a solution. Mr. Speaker, if you look at, for example, Laikipia, as said by previous speakers, the entire, almost 60% of Laikipia is owned by the British in that area. Mr. Speaker, from Naivasha all the way to Gilgil, it is owned by the same people, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I think what I would like to even inform the committee which will look into this is that there is need for us to develop a policy as a country that will be able to deal with this matter so that, Mr. Speaker, we can compensate our people and at some level be able to reclaim this land and allocate to our people, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kisang.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I wish to make comments on the petition by the Majority Leader. Honorable Speaker, this is a countrywide issue. When the colonists came to Kenya, they looked for good, fertile land across the country, and they took over and chased our people away from the good land, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, there was a report that was done by TJRC. If that report could be implemented by this government, I believe most of the issues that we are discussing today will be resolved, because a lot of injustices has been done against the people of Rift Valley, Central Kenya, Eastern.
Senator Chirangei, Senator Kajwang,
Eastern
Senator Kavindu, and Senator Kinyua.
I need your protection,
kindly consult, yes, but consult in low tones so that we can be able to hear the good senator make his contributions. Thank you.
Yeah, Honorable Speaker, and most of them have also spoken, so I don't know why they are consulting in high tones. Honorable Speaker, I was saying THRC report should be implemented, and it will sort out most of these issues. Honorable Speaker, what is also very clear is the term of the leases. I know the British gave themselves long leases of 999 years. We need to review the leases so that it cannot go beyond 99 years. And as soon as the leases expire, as my colleague Honorable Jeptuma said, then the land should revert back to the government and to the communities that they were taken originally from, so that they get redistributed and then they get the land free of charge, instead of the rich buying the land as the leases expire, or they allocate themselves the land, and those who are poor continue to languish in poverty, and the rich take the land. Honorable Speaker, along the coastal part of the country, there are many absentee landlords. The land is lying idle, people don't have titles, they can't borrow loans, and this is one of the things that we need to move with speed as a country and rectify the injustices that have been done against our people. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 238-1, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights, with the latitude to have other committees co-opted to these hearings, so that we can have a comprehensive consideration of this petition. In terms of Standing Order 238-2, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading this prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. I thank you. Honorable Senators, I have a communication to make. In the public gallery, we have 50 pupils accompanied by 7 teachers from Christ the King Cathedral Primary School in Bungoma County, who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I will allow Senator Wafula to make brief welcome remarks before we resume our usual orders.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunitunuku nafasi hii kuwakaribisha vijana, mabinti ambao wako hapa kuja kujionea kwa macho ni jumba lipi ambao kijana wao mzawa huwakilisha. Ni jumba lipi ambamo ndugu yao Mheshimiwa Sifuna hutunga sheria. Mheshimiwa Spika, wanafunzi hawa watu wetu husema damu ni nzito japo tofauti za kisiasa. Sisi wote tunazaliwa Bungoma. Mheshimiwa Spika, wanafunzi hawa ambao wamekaa hapa ndani ni miongoni mwa wanafunzi wenye tabia nzuri, wenye heshima na ambao wamejipanga katika masomo yao. Shule hii ya Christ the King, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni shule ambayo mtihani uliokwisha hivi majuzi, shule hii ilitoa mwanafunzi wa kwanza Kenya hii. Na ndo kwa sababu tukasema chanda chema uvikwa bete. Pete hii wamekaa hapa wakijionea kwamba jinsi mwanariadha shupavu alisema, binadamu hatimiliki, binadamu hana kikomo, yote yawezekana chini ya jua na juu ya ardhi. Sisi viongozi wenu, wanafunzi tunawapenda, Mkituona sisi, jua kwamba yote yawezekana. Tumetoka familia ndogo chochole, wazazi wetu hawakutambulika na yeyote, lakini Mungu huyu halali, machozi ya waja wake hayampiti hivi akitazama. Nyinyi wanafunzi tunawapenda, na mjionee hapa wale ambao mnawaenzi kwenye vyombo vya habari. Tuko na Mheshimiwa Speaker Jefferson Kingi, msomi na wakili. Tuko na Mheshimiwa Boni Khalwale, kiongozi jirani kule nyumbani. Tuko na aliyekuwa gavana Mheshimiwa Mandago yuko hapa, na wengine wengi. Viongozi wanawake wako hapa wenye tajriba kubwa, ambayo kuja kwao hapa hawakuja kwa sababu wamevaa marinda, lakini yale yaliyo vichwani mwao. Sasa kueni na imani kwamba Kenya hii ni yetu sisi sote, na sisi kama viongozi tutahakikisha mnapata haki yenu. Tuliwaahidi masomo yatakuwa bure. Kama viongozi tutasukuma serikali ifanye jinsi tulikubaliana. Sisi kama viongozi, walimu mko hapa, tumejadili masuala yenu kwamba nyinyi ni wachapa kazi ambao mnachapa kazi mkilia, mkiuliza Mungu tulikosea nini. Hivi leo katika jumba hili tumejadili na tutajadili masuala ya walimu Kenya hii. Sasa msikate tamaa, tuna sababu ya kuishi na kuboresha Kenya. Sasa muwe na imani kwamba chini ya uongozi wa Mheshimiwa Jefferson Kingi na viongozi walio wengi na walio wachache na viongozi wa kamati mbalimbali, yote itawezekana. Mheshimiwa Speaker, sitaki kupita hapo, ni wapi wenzangu nafasi pia kujivunia wanafunzi kutoka Bungoma, na mkirudi Bungoma waambie tuko imara, mnaona jinsi tunafanya kazi. Msijihurumie ama mseme laiti mngejua. Semeni tungejua mapema angepita mapema. Asante sana na Mungu awalinde.
Senator Sifuna.
Unajua Mheshimiwa Speaker, mimi si mtu wa kutishwa eti na lugha yoyote. Ninaweza kutoa hoja zangu kwa lugha yoyote ile ambayo itamridhisha kiongozi wa walio wengi. Na kwa sababu omba kwamba nitumie Kiswahili kwa sababu ndugu yangu Senator wa Bungoma kweli ana weledi wa lugha hiyo, na nitajaribu na mimi pia niweze kuenda katika nyayo zake hizo. Mheshimiwa Speaker, wengi wanajua kwamba mimi ni mzaliwa wa kaunti ya Bungoma. Wakati wa likizo ya Krismasi, baada ya sisi kumaliza ile shughuli ambayo ulikuwa umetupa hapa na ndugu zetu wa Meru chini ya uongozi wa Mheshimiwa Boni Khalwale, Senator wa Kakamega, nilienda kule nyumbani ili kuona wazazi, na wakati mmoja tumeenda katika hili kanisa la Christ the King ambalo ndo kanisa la babangu mzazi na mamangu mzazi. Na wakati tuko hapo, unajua katika sala za Wakristo wa Kikatoliki kuna wakati ambapo wanawapa waumini nafasi ama fursa ya kusoma neno kabla sasa yule ambaye ni mhubiri ama father haja hubiri. Mheshimiwa Speaker, siku hiyo ilikuwa zamu ya watoto wawili watatu. Mmoja anaitwa Sandra Nelima, mwingine anaitwa Valencia Matiro, na mwingine anaitwa Kevin Otieno, kusoma kabla yani father hajasoma somo la kwanza na somo la pili. Mimi kweli niliridhika na nilifurahisha sana na jinsi ambavyo watoto hao walikuwa na uwezo wa kuweza kusoma Kiswahili kwa lugha ambayo, kwa njia ambayo ilieleweka na waumini wote waliokuwa mle kanisani. Na wachekesha kidogo nikiwaambia kwamba jinsi ambavyo walivyosoma siku hiyo, kuna maseneta wengi sana ndani ya bunge hili ambao hawawezi kufikia kiwango hicho. Na nikawaahidi kwamba nitawaalika hapa wajionee wenyewe ili nisikue kwamba nawaharibia wenzangu sifa. Kwa hivyo kwa huo wito, ningependa umpe fursa seneta wa Kisumu, Mheshimiwa yuko wapi profesa, na umwambie kwamba aongee Kiswahili pekee, tuone kama anaweza kufikia hiyo kiwango cha hawa vijana. Umpe fursa rafiki yangu seneta wa Homa Bay ambao huwa wanasema Kiswahili sio mdomo chao, Mheshimiwa Speaker, ili hawa dada zangu wadogo wajiaminie kwamba siku wanawaharibia wenzangu sifa. Na kama ikizidi, umpe Mheshimiwa Abbas na yeye nafasi, fursa. Yuko pale, tuone ataweka bahali yake. So kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Speaker, nashukuru sana kwa kunipa fursa hii kuwakaribisha hawa ndugu zangu na dada zangu katika bunge letu hili la Seneti,
naamini kwamba wamepata fursa ya kuona jinsi ambavyo tunaendesha mambo yetu hapa na kuwapa moyo kwamba jinsi ambavyo na mimi niliondokea sehemu hizo na sasa mimi ni seneta wa jiji kuu la Nairobi. Inawezekana kwamba na wao wakitia hekima na fora katika masomo yao watajipata hapa siku moja na wao wakihutubia taifa jinsi ambavyo tunafanya hapa. Langu ni kuwatakia kila laheri, safari njema mnaporudi nyumbani na mwasalimia wazazi wenu. Mnajua mimi ni mmoja wenu katika kanisa la Christ the King. Hata jumuiya, mnajua jumuiya yangu, mwasalimu wote, muambie kwamba nawapenda. Asante sana na Mungu awabariki.
Thank you, Senator Sifuna. What is the point of order, Senator Kajua?
Bwana Spika, je, ni nidhamu kwa seneta wa Nairobi kujifanya kama kinyonga katika hili jumba la seneti? Kwa sababu amesema kwamba alizaliwa Bungoma. Wiki iliyopita tukiwa na baba kule Kakamega akasema alizaliwa Kakamega. Juzi akitafuta kura Nairobi akasema alizaliwa Nairobi. Wiki tatu tulikuwa Kisumu alisema alizaliwa Kisumu. Je, ni nidhamu kweli? Kuna tuko na hawa vijana ambao au wanafunzi ambao wametoka Bungoma ambao wanatarajia kwamba hapa seneti watu wanasema ukweli mtupu. Huyu seneta wa Nairobi anajifanya kama tikiti maji. Na kwa wale ambao hawaelewi Kiswahili, tikiti maji ni watermelon. Is it in order, Mr. Speaker?
Waheshimiwa senators, nafikiri tuiachie pale alofika. Manake tukiendelea tutatokea sehemu ambayo pengine hatujajitayarisha tufike pale. Kwa hivyo karani wa bunge, tafadhali, next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, Thursday the 9th of March 2023. This is a report of the Controller of Budget on the first half county government's budget implementation review for financial year 2022-2023. A very important document, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements.
Senator Murango. Senator James Murango. Senator Geoffrey Osotsi. It's deferred. Senator Hamida Kibwana. Senator, I called your name twice.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I think the majority leader was here. I couldn't hear myself, confusing me somehow.
Senators, you need to be attentive because once we call your statement and you don't respond, we are going to defy it. So let us be attentive. Before we proceed, in fact, with the statements under Standing Order 53-1, Majority Leader, you have your weekly statement to make. Are you ready to make that statement now before we move to the statements under Order 53-1?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Order number 57-1, I hereby present the business of the Senate for the week commencing Tuesday, 14th March 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, the status of the legislative business as at today is 16 bills which are at second reading stage. 3 of these bills are scheduled in today's paper, order paper numbers 1, 12, and 13, while the remaining 13 bills have been referred to the respective standing committees for consideration pursuant to Standing Order number 45. The Senate Business Committee will schedule these bills for second reading upon completion of the 30-day period for the committees to consider bills. However, Mr. Speaker, in the event that a standing committee tables a report earlier than the stipulated timeline, the Senate Business Committee have no problem and will prioritize such bill for second reading. Mr. Speaker, sir, 4 other bills are at the concurrent stage pursuant to Article number 110(3) of the Constitution and will be scheduled for first reading upon the completion of this process. At this juncture, I urge respective standing committees to expeditiously consider bills referred to them and table reports pursuant to Standing Order number 148 soon enough. 9 bills will mature for the second reading stage, and it would be useful, Mr. Speaker, for this House to consider these bills with the benefit of a report tabled from the concerned committees. I take this opportunity to urge respective movers to be available in the chamber whenever their bills are scheduled on the order paper. This will ensure that the legislative agenda of the House stays on track and on course, and the transition to the next stage is seamless. On this matter, I also urge the honorable senators to be available in the House to undertake divisions on bills in a timely manner and have them referred to the National Assembly. As you will observe in today's order paper, the Senate is lagging behind on divisions at order number 9, number 10, number 11. I cannot make this any more succinct. Take individual responsibility and turn up to vote, honorable members. Mr. Speaker, sir, with respect to petitions, the Senate has received 7 petitions which have been committed to the respective committees pursuant to Standing Order number 238-1. I continue to urge respective committees to consider these petitions expeditiously and to table reports within the required 16-day period. Statements continue to be useful oversight tool, and numerous have been sought pursuant to Standing Order number 53, as well as those made pursuant to Standing Order number 52-1. I encourage senators and indeed respective standing committees to identify gaps and gray areas in considering statements and to develop legislative interventions to address these challenges. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, on Tuesday, the 14th March 2023, the Senate Business Committee will consider and approve the business for the day. This will contain business that will not be concluded from today's order paper and any other business scheduled by the Senate's Business Committee. The order paper for Wednesday, 15th March 2023, respectively. The Senate Business Committee will also schedule any other business as well as petitions and statements pursuant to standing orders. I thank you and hereby lay the statement on the table of the Senate.
Senator Murango.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations on the status of investigation into the death of Mr. Kennedy Joroge and Mr. Ndungu Joroge in Mwasab County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, inform the Senate of the circumstances leading to the deaths of the 2 brothers that occurred in Mwasab County on 14th February 2023. 2, appraise the Senate of the state of investigation into the 2 deaths, stating how many suspects have been arrested and when they will be arraigned in court to face charges. 3, explain why the government failed to provide security during the burial of the 2 victims of Kiamanyeki village, which was disrupted by the local residents and mourners who cut away caskets containing the bodies and dumped them in the at the local police station in protest over the killings, and 4, outline measures, if any, the Ministry of Interior National Administration has taken to address the rising tensions at the Embu, Kirinyaga, Mbunda, where the deaths occurred. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sieng and Senator Manzo, I can see you on the queue. Should I therefore assume you want to contribute to this? So then, can you please move from the queue? Thank you. Senator Hamida? Yes, proceed.
Request for statement on the prevalence of Hyperemeris gravidarum in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Health on the prevalence of Hyperemeris gravidarum, a condition characterized by severe nausea, vomiting, weight loss, and electrolyte disturbance in pregnant women in Kenya. In the statement, the committee should appraise the Senate on the relatively high prevalence of Hyperemeris gravidarum in Kenya compared to other countries regionally and globally. 2, state measures, if any, being taken by the Ministry of Health to ensure that healthcare providers are efficient in diagnosing and treating Hyperemeris gravidarum in pregnant women. 3, outline specific programs or initiatives put in place by the Ministry of Health to address the needs of pregnant women suffering from HG, such as providing access to specialized care or financial support, counseling or mental health services to address the psychological toll of the condition. 4, outline the current standard of care of managing HG with end plans for revision in light of new research or treatment options, stating measures, if any, to collaborate with international organizations or researchers to advance the study on HG in the Kenyan context, or to learn from the experiences of other countries facing similar challenges. 5, outline efforts underway to raise awareness about HG among public in encouraging pregnant women to seek medical help if they are experiencing symptoms that are common with the condition. And finally, outline plans, if any, to address the potential impact of HG on maternal and fetal health outcomes in Kenya, providing the data being collected to track these outcomes. She had 2 statements. The next statement is on reports of sexual abuse at James Finley Kenya Limited. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on reports of rampant sexual abuse in plantations owned by James Finley Kenya Limited in Kericho and Bomet counties. In the statement, the committee should, 1, state steps taken by the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection to address the issue of rampant sexual harassment and abuse of workers at plantations owned by James Finley Kenya Limited in Kericho and Bomet counties once and for all. 2nd, cause an investigation into the conduct of the management of the tea company in view of the reports outlining steps taken to punish the culprits and bring relief and compensation to the women affected. 3rdly, outline regulatory or legal measures that will be implemented to protect workers in Kenya's tea industry from sexual harassment and exploitation, as well as methods for enforcing these measures. 4, state any existing industry standards or codes of conduct that address the issue of sexual harassment in the Kenya tea industry and explain their effectiveness. And finally, outline any available support for survivors of sexual harassment and abuse and indicate the steps taken to raise awareness about its availability and accessibility to victims.
You have read both statements, Senator Esi. Thank you. Senator Lekina, I can see you on the queue. Do you want to contribute to? Then just move out of the queue. You are on my order paper, so move from the queue. Thank you. Senator Maruma. Senator Mundigi.
Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I arise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to take statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on the